Tonight, last chance. Senators work through the weekend, trying to forge a new military aid deal to help Ukraine fight Russia. The war at a critical moment. President Biden taking aim at congressional Republicans.
Not to support Ukraine is close to criminal neglect.
Vital aid to Israel's war in Gaza also at stake, with U.S. relations fraying fast.
Fear and panic in Rafah, the last safe zone and Israel's next target. I'm Deborah Patter in Jerusalem.
Also tonight, damage control. President Biden's re-election campaign facing sharp questions following claims in a controversial report.
There's no way that they're not in complete panic right now.
Plus, game ready. A city built for spectacle set for Super Bowl 58. 49ers versus the Chiefs.
I'm Chris Van Cleve in Las Vegas. About 500,000 people flooding Sin City for the big game, and the countdown is on.
And later, super surprise.
You're going to the Super Bowl!
Norah O'Donnell helps get a fan to the big game for his role assisting some Americans who compete every day.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
And now you're going to the Super Bowl.
Which is starting to sink in now.
This is the CBS Weekend News from Washington with Adriana Diaz.
Good evening. Adriana is off. I'm Robert Costa. Tonight, negotiations over the next phase of U.S. funding for conflicts in Ukraine and Israel remain on the brink as senators work through the weekend on a package. This latest push follows the collapse of bipartisan talks over sweeping legislation on border security and foreign aid, and as allies in Europe pressure the U.S. to step in as Ukraine faces more turmoil. The country's top general was replaced this week. Overnight, at least 7 people, including 3 children, died after a Russian drone strike in a residential neighborhood in Kharkiv. Fire crews fought flames that local authorities say destroyed several homes. And in the Middle East, there's new tension between the U.S. and Israel, with the war in Gaza expanding. CBS's Deborah Patta is in Jerusalem with the latest.
Good evening. The 1.4 million Palestinians seeking shelter in Rafah have been given several options by Israel. They can move to another part of Rafah, go to Khan Yunis, which is still regularly bombed, or return to the north, which has been all but obliterated.
This was supposed to be the last stop. This woman fled with her family from Khan Yunis to stay with her sister in Rafah. But the home she sought refuge in was among those hit in an Israeli airstrike. Her sister was killed along with 11 others, including 5 children. After more than 4 months of war, the tents of those displaced go on for miles. Fear and despair are rising. The choice is stark: stay or run, either way, risking death. The north of Gaza is one area Israel has suggested people return to. But this is where 6-year-old Hind Rajab and her 15-year-old cousin Layan were trapped in a car surrounded by dead relatives after they came under fire nearly 2 weeks ago. They phoned the Red Crescent for help. Layan died, but little Hind was still alive, begging them to save her. The Red Crescent stayed talking to Hind for hours. After being given the green light by the Israeli military, 2 brave paramedics finally set off on a rescue mission. Their last call to the office was chilling, said spokeswoman Nabal Farsak. We heard gunshots, then an explosion, she said. Then we lost communication. Today, the 2 men were found blown to pieces in their clearly marked ambulance. Just a few meters away, little Hind lay dead in her shattered car.
Rafah is not just the last refuge, it's also an entry point for humanitarian aid and where doctors are treating patients from all over Gaza, Robert, desperately trying to save lives.
Deborah Patta in Jerusalem. Thank you. Tonight, following claims in a controversial Justice Department report, which have been called gratuitous by the White House, there is new debate about the president's age and his decision to seek re-election. CBS's Christina Ruffini is at the White House. Christina?
Good evening, Robert. Today, the Biden campaign, trying to deflect focus, released a statement cataloging incidents where it says former President Trump appeared, quote, confused, deranged, lying, or worse.
Perhaps seeking a reprieve, President Biden today met his sister for lunch and did some shopping in Wilmington, as the fallout in Washington from the special counsel's report is serving up a headache for his campaign.
There's no way that they're not in complete panic right now.
Stumping in South Carolina, Republican presidential hopeful Nikki Haley, who has frequently criticized both frontrunners for their age, gave out mental competency tests to the crowd.
America can do better than two 80-year-olds for president. We need to wake up to that.
In his report, Republican special counsel Robert Hur recommended no criminal prosecution regarding President Biden's retention of classified documents. But he did refer to the president's memory at least 9 times, describing him as a, quote, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing.
And today on the campaign trail, former President Trump, who's fielded his own share of mental competency questions, criticized the Justice Department for not bringing charges, but shied away from directly piling on.
The real problem facing our country is not Joe Biden's decline. The real problem is that Joe Biden is causing America's decline.
Christina, what is the latest on Capitol Hill?
Well, senators are here today, which is rare. Now that the bipartisan border deal has fallen apart, they're trying to strip out the foreign aid piece, money for Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific, and now Gaza, to get just that part of it passed. This is because next week, many of them will be heading to an international security conference in Munich, where they can expect an earful from European leaders who are getting increasingly worried that gridlock in Washington could be catastrophic for the war in Ukraine. But look, regardless of what the Senate manages to cobble together, it's unlikely to get anywhere in the House. Robert.
Christina Ruffini, thanks. Today, federal accident investigators arrived at the site of a deadly helicopter crash in the Mojave Desert near the California-Nevada border. The Eurocopter carrying 6 people went down Friday night. There were no survivors. Also today, this small plane crash made a crash landing on a street in Goodyear, Arizona. Fire officials say the Cessna lost engine power. It struck a parked car, causing minimal damage. No injuries were reported. Now to Super Bowl 58. Kickoff is now less than a day away. For the first time, the NFL's championship game is taking place under the bright lights of Las Vegas, and now host to the biggest event in American sport. CBS's Chris Van Cleve is there with the latest on what to expect. Chris.
Bob, this really is an event almost 60 years in the making, and one that many people here in Las Vegas thought might never happen. But now we're on the final countdown to Super Bowl 58. Anywhere you look along the famous Las Vegas Strip, one thing is very clear. Super Bowl 58 is near.
Woo! Let's go Niners!
The energy of the city just makes you go, 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 go.
Both the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers are making final preparations.
Ready for the Super Bowl?
For some extra support, the Niners flew all their employees, families, and even some friends, plane loads totaling about 800 people. An estimated 500,000 fans have flooded Las Vegas, packing the Strip and the NFL fan experience.
It's not about just gambling, it's about live entertainment, restaurants, and now it's becoming a sports mecca.
Only about 60,000 are fortunate enough to have tickets to get inside Allegiant Stadium, and they'll be able to indulge in 4 over-the-top Super Bowl signature dishes, including these tenderloin, king crab, and lobster-loaded nachos.
Your expectations are to be wowed and to be entertained and to have over-the-top.
For a town that's no stranger to glitz, glamour, and big events.
It's known as a party city, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
This Super Bowl is truly a first.
This will become the biggest weekend of the year, for sure. Maybe of all time.
Sam Joffrey leads the Super Bowl host committee.
It all happened so fast. The Raiders move here, the build of the stadium, then the Pro Bowl, the draft, 2 Pro Bowls, and now we're finally here.
Security will be tight. More than 30 different local, state, and federal agencies are working to keep the Super Bowl safe. And NORAD has fighters on standby to enforce the no-fly zone. We got a ride in an F-15 during a pre-Super Bowl training mission. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
What's your level of concern
going into Sunday.
It's very important that people understand that we have no specific credible threat against the Super Bowl.
They do expect most of the fans going to the game to be doing so on foot, so they're encouraging people to leave some extra time for some potential gridlock on the ground as people make their way up the strip to the stadium, Bob.
Chris Van Cleve, thanks. And you can watch Super Bowl 58 on Sunday right here on CBS, Paramount Plus, and Nickelodeon. To the weather now, a sprawling winter storm is forecast to bring strong winds, heavy rain, and up to a foot of snow to some parts of the East Coast early next week. CBS's Michael George joins us for more on what's been a wild winter. Michael?
Robert, good evening. I'm in Central Park. It's 55 degrees, and the only thing frozen here is Woolman Rink because it's artificial. During an unusually warm season, a lot of the activities we normally associate with winter just aren't possible.
It's a little hard to play hockey without enough ice. This wet, warm winter has been disappointing for some people hoping to play outside.
I was going to play on the Squirt C team, and it got canceled because the weather.
In Minnesota, the ice is so thin, it's devastating the ice fishing season.
It's definitely frustrating.
The National Environmental Education Foundation estimates warmer winters in Montana and Wyoming will shrink the snowmobiling and cross-country seasons 20 to 60% over the next 75 years. Even the Great Lakes, unusually ice-free this winter. California also not immune to the wild weather. Elise Preston is in Los Angeles.
This is what it looks like for many Los Angeles residents still trying to clean up after the devastating rain earlier this week led to 600 mudslides. Downtown LA got half of the rainfall in 2 days it normally gets in a year. And people here only have a few days in the sun to clean up because even more rain is expected in a week.
El Nino and climate change are to blame for the warm-up, according to Professor of Atmospheric Sciences Paul Roundy.
On average, we will see more winters with less snow. Year-to-year variability is still really large.
And many winter sports competitions are relying on artificial snow and ice because Mother Nature isn't cooperating. Robert?
Michael George, thanks. Today is the start of the Lunar New Year. It's out with the rabbit and in with the dragon for 2024. It's one of the biggest single celebrations in the world, marked by more than 1 billion people. It was also observed aboard the Chinese space station. According to Chinese culture, the dragon symbolizes power, nobility, honor, and success. Straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, Sunday's Super Bowl could be the most watched on record, but CBS's Ben Tracy will show us that's not the only milestone for the NFL.
This year's Super Bowl also has superpowers, thanks to this giant solar farm in the middle of the Nevada desert.
This Sunday's Super Bowl in Las Vegas will be notable for something that has nothing to do with the commercials, the halftime show, or even the game. CBS's Ben Tracy shows us the NFL stadium is making environmental history by going green.
How big is this solar farm? How many panels do you have out here?
Yes, we've got 621,000 panels.
This solar farm outside of Las Vegas can power about 60,000 homes, or one very large stadium.
100% of the energy needs of Allegiant Stadium come from this facility.
The Las Vegas Raiders say their stadium is the first in the NFL powered entirely by renewable energy, thanks to a 25-year deal with this new solar farm owned by NV Energy. Doug Cannon is its CEO.
How much energy does it take to power Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, so it'll be over 10 megawatts. That's about equivalent to 46,000 homes.
Sustainability was front of mind as the stadium was being constructed.
Raiders president Sandra Douglas Morgan says the stadium also takes less energy to cool because its roof allows in light but blocks all solar heat. The natural grass field is moved outside on a rail system for sunlight instead of using energy-intensive growing lights. And everything from food scraps to cigarette butts are composted or converted into other forms of energy.
When you come to a game, you may be thinking about just focusing on the game, but when they hear that and know that we're being conscious of our environmental footprint, hopefully that guest will leave and have that same mindset when they go back home.
That's a lot of power.
That's a lot of power.
It's unique enough to warrant a visit from U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm.
All renewable energy comes here.
Why did you want to come see this?
I wanted to come see it because there is, a lot of concern about whether renewable energy is going to be reliable.
She says powering something this big proves renewables are reliable replacements for fossil fuels and their planet-warming emissions. These white boxes at the solar farm house batteries that store 5 hours worth of power for when the sun is not shining.
And that storage component, which a lot of people don't realize, is a huge piece of how we're going to get to 100% clean electricity by 2035, which is the president's goal nationally.
And come Sunday, the Super Bowl's most powerful starting lineup will be out here in the desert.
And if you're going to have the Super Bowl in the middle of the desert, you might as well use the sun.
Let's utilize the resources that we've got to make it a sustainable Super Bowl as well.
Ben Tracy, CBS News, Las Vegas.
Still ahead on the CBS Weekend News, bone in or boneless? Breaking down one of the big game's big questions. Today, Taylor Swift performed the last of 3 sold-out shows at Japan's Tokyo Dome. After the final bow, Swift left the country. And tonight, her private jet touched down in Los Angeles. Swift's next stop expected to be Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. More than 100 million people are expected to watch the Super Bowl right here on CBS. For some viewers, the ads can be as entertaining as the game.
100% electric.
It's the real deal.
Yeah, it's the man.
Christopher Walken is a pitchman, and Budweiser's Clydesdales return for a nostalgic run. And it's expensive. A 30-second ad this year costs advertisers $7 million. Compare that to 1968, when a commercial cost just over $37,000. Another game day staple, chicken wings. But are they bone-in or out? This map shows the geographic breakdown. Boneless is the preferred option across the South and along the West Coast. Bone-in is top choice in the Midwest. Next on the CBS Weekend News, a super surprise for a most deserving football fan.
How do you feel? You didn't know this was coming, huh? Guys.
Finally tonight, the chance of scoring a Super Bowl ticket is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for some fans. Our Nora O'Donnell shares the story of one of them.
Terrence Thornton was psyched when he learned the Super Bowl would take place here in Las Vegas.
Being a Vegas native, the fact that we're hosting this in my home city is amazing, and couldn't be more honored to have that happen here.
He's a big fan of sports and the benefits of sports. Thornton is the head of the Special Olympics Nevada, which gives 20,000 kids and adults with intellectual disabilities a chance to compete.
What's the most fulfilling part of it?
Is to be able to help people understand the abilities that people with disabilities have. I think so many times people focus on those 3 letters, the dis, and discount the abilities.
Thornton thought he'd be watching the Super Bowl at home with friends, but that all changed when we met him along with Baltimore Ravens wide receiver Nelson Aguilar.
You're going to the Super Bowl! Isn't that amazing?
Oh my God, thank you so much.
For 7 years, the NFL and Super Bowl host committee have been giving away tickets to community leaders. They enlist celebrities to help, like country music superstar Luke Bryan.
2 tickets.
No.
To
Oh my God.
the Super Bowl.
No. You're kidding.
And magician David Blaine and former NFL running back Steven Jackson. Thornton says he knew some of the Special Olympic athletes would get to attend, but never expected he'd get to go too.
You're being recognized for your generosity and your leadership. What's your message to others?
I think so many times we look at the differences between one human to the next versus looking at what really ties us together. Everybody wants to be respected, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants to be heard. And I think if we could just all take a beat and do that for each other, the world will be a better place.
Agreed. We have much more in common than most people think.
A win and a message for everyone.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
And now you're going to the Super Bowl.
Going to the Super Bowl. Which is starting to sink in now.
Nora O'Donnell, CBS News, Las Vegas.
That's the CBS Weekend News for this Saturday. First thing tomorrow, Sunday morning with Jane Pauley. Then on Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan's guests include Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley, as well as Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Good night.